Hello, everybody. It's 2 minutes after 1. It's time to start. I'm sure many people will join us later, but anyway, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to this edition of Cambridge Day Bulgaria 2021. Here I should admit something. Last year I promised that this day will be not online, will be in the offline, face-to-face. Unfortunately, I was not able to deliver this promise, and I hope it is the last promise that I won't be able to deliver. And next year, we really will do Cambridge Day as we used to do it, glamorous and nice event. Outside the sun is shining, the weather is nice, and we all miss physical contact. But anyway, this is the new reality, and more or less for 1 year, we get used to it, and we do our best to take the best of the event. So welcome again to the Cambridge Day. Thank you for our friends and partners from Cambridge University Press for helping us to make this event, to ensuring these really nice speakers from Cambridge, Dan Vincent, Matthew Elman, Andrei Rachkovsky, and Karen Elliott. And here is point to thanks also our Bulgarian friends who are helping us to make this event international with strong Bulgarian participants. First, today's event will be Stanka, Vladeva, and Elena Georgieva. And tomorrow you'll be able to listen and see Christian Zhelev. Thank you again for this. I'm sure the event will be really useful for all the teachers who join us, and you enjoy, and of course you take some things for your class this afternoon. I hope you're well. We went through the really difficult situation of the lockdown and pandemic. In a way, it's a new reality, but I do hope you'll be soon back completely to your classrooms, and you'll be able to use the full functionalities of Cambridge University Press materials like before. In the beginning of the year, we had also some difficulties with the consequences of Brexit, with the delay of the orders, but I believe at the moment everything is under control. And we, with my colleagues Clet and Maggie personally, we are taking care to everything to be on time for you when you need it. With the coming of the summer, we will start collecting the preliminary orders for the autumn, and we hope we have the normal season and everything will be delivered on time for your beginning of the new school year. But anyway, it's still end of this year, and we have to look at the materials and have to think what is our proper choice for the new school year. That's why I'm handing over to Duncan and to our colleagues from Cambridge. Good luck for the event and enjoy.
Well, thank you so much, Vlado, and thank you all for attending. It has been some year, hasn't it? You know, let's hope things get back to normal as soon as possible. Right, I'm going to share a screen, I hope. I am doing now, that's good. So I'm going to give you a bit of a slightly more formal introduction than Vlado, but the informality is there. I mean, we really appreciate the support we've had from the team at Clet. We thank you for your help. It's been a hard year for all of our customers all over the region, but we are coming out of it now. I've had one vaccination. I don't know if you've had any, Vlado, but hopefully you're fixed up soon. I'll be fully protected before too long, and so I think we'll be back on the road before very much more time elapses. Okay, so on behalf of CUP and also this year Cambridge Assessment, I'd like to welcome you to the day. We think it will be a stimulating event. We've got lots of varied topics. We've got lots of varied speakers. I think their talks will work well in the virtual environment. I hope so anyway. But like Vlado says, I hope that we'll be able to do this in a more personal and interactive way next time. But this time we've still got to use these Zoom functions. So if you write in the chat box, please make sure that you address all participants and panelists, because I think the default setting is for panelists only. So by all means do that, but that probably will get quite busy. So if you have any specific questions that you want recorded or that you want to be kept for later, then write that in the Q&A. And Gabriella and I will be noting those down, and we'll come back to them at the end of each session. And if we don't get to them at the end of each session, we'll come back to you afterwards. There will be certificates of attendance and there will be recordings available. Watch out for a feedback form, which you'll see in the chat box at some point during the event or maybe afterwards. And there will also be follow-up emails. Okay, right, so before we start, I'd like to give you a little bit of background because this year is a bit of a special year for Cambridge, really. You're probably already very familiar with Cambridge University Press and with Cambridge Assessment English as individual organisations, but perhaps you aren't aware that these two departments of the university are actually going to be moving even more closely together. And indeed, from the 1st of August, we will become one organisational structure within the university. Between us, we publish and create content and examinations that are used across so many countries, 170 countries of the world. And this move together is really a response to the kind of growing need from learners and from teachers to engage with Cambridge in this joined up way where assessment and learning are linked together. And I think this integrated approach has been accelerated by the digital, the needs of digital that we've had during the pandemic. And that's led to some new ways of working. And I think the new organisation will have better capabilities to deliver that world-leading assessment and learning that we're aiming for. And so the Cambridge brand will be completely backed by first-class teaching and assessment departments. So you already know the university itself it's over 800 years old, and it's maintained its position as one of the highest ranked in the world for such a long time. We've got hundreds of Nobel Prize winners, many of whom have been published by Cambridge University Press, right back to Sir Isaac Newton. And the Cambridge University Press is the oldest publishing house in the world, and it originated from the time of Henry VIII in 1534. And it has been producing books continually since that time, since the first books were published a little later than 1534. And there was a printing house set up right beside where the bookshop, Cambridge University bookshop, is in Cambridge still now. The press continues and will continue to comprise three divisions: the academic division, the education division, and the English language teaching division. And the ELT division is the youngest of those. It was founded really quite recently, relatively recently, in 1973. But it's rapidly become probably the most important part of the divisions. Of course, we've got some memorable things. Many teachers will be familiar with Ray Murphy's English Grammar and News, and that's now in its 5th edition and well over 30 years of publishing. And it's been used by over 100 million learners now. But we're also very progressive in technology, and we've got a huge investment in digital products, which you'll hear a little bit more about in a moment. Meanwhile, on the Cambridge Assessment side, Cambridge Assessment English develops and produces probably the most valuable range of qualifications for learners and teachers of English in the whole world. And over 5 million people take the Cambridge exams each year in more than 130 countries. And around the world, over 20,000 universities, employers and government ministries and other organisations accept those qualifications. And again, we have a large dedicated research team, the largest of any English language assessment provider, including some of the world's leading experts in the field of language assessment. So on this picture, you can see what I can only assume to be an examination hall where the first Cambridge English exam, which was the Cambridge Certificate of Proficiency in English, was taken back in the early 20th century. And that exam was designed for, and I'm quoting here, for foreign students who desire a satisfactory proof of their knowledge of the language with a view to teaching it in foreign schools. And believe it or not, the exam took 12 hours to take in those days, and it cost £3, which is approximately £350 in today's prices. And it was only open for candidates of age 20 or over. So it was quite discriminatory and quite challenging. And how times have changed. Now there's a huge suite of exams that you can take. And since that's developed really since 1939, when the lower certificate transformed to the first certificate later on. And then a whole sequence of other exams more recently. And I wouldn't want to speak to you today without showing you the lovely Triangle building in Cambridge. This is actually the headquarters of Cambridge Assessment. And it's just beside the Cambridge University Press building, which is slightly more modest, an old printing house. But this triangle building is somewhere where I think we probably will find ourselves all working in the future. It's only 5 kilometers from where I'm sitting now, but believe it or not, I've only been there once in the past 12 or 13 months, which is a really strange feeling. And as Vlado was saying, we just can't wait to get back to normal and have some face-to-face contact and see some people again. So I think our commitment is really to help people learn English and prove their skills to the world. Our qualifications and tests are for all of our learners, but English is more than just exams and grades. It's also about having confidence to communicate and to access enriching experiences and opportunities. And to do that, we use a step-by-step approach to qualifications, and that aims to accompany learners right throughout that learning journey. And all of the qualifications relate to the CEFR, of course, and the Cambridge English Scale. And we do offer some other tests, online tests like the Cambridge English Placement Test and LinguaSkill, to help schools and organisations assess and check English levels of English and groups of candidates in other areas outside the exams. Cambridge exams and preparation centres are spread right across the globe, and there are over 52,000 preparation centres. And indeed, your school can also apply to become an authorised exam preparation centre if you're not already one. There's no minimum number of candidates that you need to prepare. So bringing Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment more closely together aims to deliver a vision to become the recognised global leader in learning and assessment. And we want to offer solutions that take advantage of our expertise in content assessment and in data, and to enable learners and teachers to achieve their potential. And as a framework for the development of new materials for English language learners, we use this concept of better learning, which I know I've spoken to you before about, and even a couple of years ago when we were there face-to-face in Sofia. And the aim is to connect teachers and learners with the latest educational and language research, and to develop materials that can deliver the most effective learning experiences. And better learning is really a continuous cycle where we gather insights from teachers and learners, and those help to shape the content of our materials, and that hopefully leads to greater success. And it's really a learning and development cycle, because that feedback that we get from successful and even unsuccessful materials all flow into the review and development process. And as a department of the university, we're in a great position to generate and maintain a really high level of academic quality and rigour. And we have the biggest team of dedicated researchers in the ELT publishing community, and a network of worldwide teachers and academic researchers all contributing to that equation. And those teachers are all encouraged to give regular feedback, and our team also collects observations from classes when they can, but they have been doing that virtually, from many countries, and testing materials with thousands of teachers through focus groups and virtual visits these days and interviews. And in terms of that research output, I'd just like to focus on a couple of areas. In particular, the Cambridge English Corpus. I think that's really worth a special mention always, because historically, it's the contribution from the research team that has the biggest impact, I think, on the development of our learning materials. The Cambridge English Corpus it's continually growing, and it's now over 2 billion entries, 2 billion words in there. It contains both written and spoken English from all around the world and from a wide variety of sources. And this corpus helps us to understand English language as it's really used in the real world. It captures how people use English in a wide variety of situations, and that really helps us to develop materials appropriately. And the research team also publishes an extensive series of white papers, and those research papers are available through the World of Better Learning website. They also produce guidelines for the design of materials based on the English profile, and English profile itself describes which aspects of English are typically learned at which level of CEFR. There's also the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework, which gives structure and reference points to integrate modern skills, 21st century skills into teaching materials. And then finally on the slide there, you'll see probably the area that most interests us at the moment in these pandemic times, which is research into digital pedagogy. So our content is the output of all of these insights that we get from our research, and it helps us to offer materials that suit the learner's needs and develop skills beyond the classroom. And for exam preparation, there is a joint Cambridge Assessment and Cambridge University Press exams publishing unit, which follows an exams journey for every book that they produce. And the teams that create the qualifications, the Cambridge English qualifications, they check and approve every step of the learner's journey in those books, so that it provides the best possible preparation for the real exams. And so every detail is as close to real exam material as possible. And as part of the process, we actually use a subset of the Cambridge English corpus that I mentioned a moment ago, and that's the Cambridge Learner Corpus. And that is a 40 million word corpus, which is made up of English exam responses written by English language learners. And that learner corpus adds understanding of common mistakes and local language mistakes to the mix, and adds focus where it's most often needed. And so that tailors to the needs of the learners with different first languages. I think it's fair to say also that digital tools have never been more relevant than they are today. We've got lots of research ongoing into the way that digital tools are used, and we need to make sure that when we do produce digital products, that they really add value to the learning process. In addition to the present time where basic digital materials are needed to continue with teaching, we can also see a future where the integration of learning and assessment play a much increased role in the language and the acquisition of language. I think you're probably familiar with some of the resources and systems that we have available already. Cambridge Learning Management System is used widely in Bulgaria, for example. But we also have lots of really strong free to access sites like the World of Better Learning that I mentioned earlier, and the Learn English with Cambridge YouTube channel. And of course, the Cambridge Dictionary Online, which now has over 50 million users. I'd just like to take a brief moment to highlight the latest learning management system though, and that's called Cambridge One, because that will become the new home for all new digital developments and new products. So Cambridge One is being developed in an agile way, a flexible way. It means that we can respond to teachers' needs and students' needs. So we'll have regular updates, and you'll see all of our new digital materials on that platform. Starting from now, it's already alive, and existing ones will be transitioned across to Cambridge One at an appropriate time in their life cycles. So in due course, Cambridge One will be the only home really for Cambridge digital materials. Probably the most significant thing about Cambridge One for the teacher's perspective is that it's a mobile-friendly platform. It means that it can be used really effectively on small digital devices. We really mean smartphones here. And so the activity types suit that type of interface. A lot of the original digital products that we produce in the Cambridge Learning Management System, they couldn't work on systems that were not mobile friendly because the activities are just too complex and heavy. Cambridge One will use sharp activity types and quick activity types that can be used on the move and in a flexible way. So please, you can take a look at Cambridge One. You can sign up as a teacher at cambridgeone.org. You can see what's available, or you can talk to us, or you can talk to our colleagues at CLEP for more information. There are already a lot of nice materials on there to look at. So that almost completes the better learning cycle, I think. And what's left really are the strong results that we believe our insights and contents can deliver. So whether we're talking about exam insights or insights around the use of language or digital tools, teachers and students can be sure that our research findings are built into our materials to help students achieve better results. And we believe that this cycle and this integration is really what makes Cambridge unique. Okay, so thanks for listening to me there. Now we've got a short break before Dan Vincent's presentation at 1:30. And Dan will be talking about learner autonomy in teenagers. So we will be back here in, I don't know how long we've got actually, we've got 10 minutes or so. There'll be a short break, just time for a quick coffee, time for a breath of fresh air. And we'll have a quick look at the Q&A and comments to see if there's anything that we can respond to right away. Thank you very much. I really hope you enjoy today and tomorrow. We look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks very much. Well, I think we have Dan with us now, don't we? Dan, hello.
Yes, hello. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yes. Joining from Madrid.
Joining from Madrid. That's hopefully you've got nice weather with
Yes, it's quite nice today.
spring-like.
Springish. Spring here. Should I share my screen now?
I think you can probably share your screen. We'll wait until 5:30 for the start. Okay, Dan. Well, shall I just give you a little introduction?
Yes, please.
I'll give you So we're really happy to welcome Dan Vincent to speak to us about learner autonomy. And Dan's experienced teacher in UK, in Japan, in Ukraine, and also in Spain, where he is now. He's a Cambridge author, having co-authored Own It, which is a teenage course, a new teenage course, and appears on Cambridge One as well. And he's also worked on a set of projects for Compact Preliminary for Schools. And I think, I mean, Dan will correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, today's session really is about how to develop students' more general learning skills. And I think that all helps them to become better and more independent learners.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, Dan, I hope you all enjoy the session again. In terms of housekeeping, we're happy to see things in chat. But I think if you want to ask questions that you would like an answer to, put them in the Q&A. We can monitor those and look at them at the end of the session. Okay, well, thanks very much. Without further ado, we'll head on. Thanks very much, Dan.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. As Duncan said, I'm going to be talking about learning to learn for the future, primarily with teenage learners. I'm a teacher myself. I'm teaching at the moment, teaching young learners and teenagers. And we're going to be looking at some activities that can help develop learning to learn. And they're activities I've tried with my own students over the years, including through the pandemic year. And hopefully you'll be able to take away some quite useful activities. Just give you a little outline of the session. First, we're going to talk about learning to learn. You've already heard that mentioned quite a few times, I think, from Duncan and in the videos. And why it's important. And then we'll look at some practical activities that can be used in class. I'm going to hopefully give you an idea of how to do these activities so you can go away and try them with your students. And then I'll answer questions at the end. Before we look at what learning to learn is, I just want to bring think about what the question, what do we do as teachers? Who are we as teachers? What do we teach? And I think we often think in terms of the subject that we teach. You might be a maths teacher teaching maths. You might be a geography teacher teaching geography, or a physics teacher teaching physics. And we often consider things in terms of the content, the subject matter that we teach. But I think for the purposes of at least learning to learn, but more broadly, we also need to think about who we teach. And we can answer the question that we actually teach people. And I think this will help us to move away from thinking too much about the subject matter itself and more about skills that we have to teach. As you've heard already, the world that we have to prepare our students for is very complex compared to in the past. Students are going to have to learn an awful lot of skills and increase their knowledge throughout their lives, throughout their rest of their education and higher education if they go into higher education, but also throughout their working lives. And I think the last year with the pandemic has shown us as teachers and also as students that we have to relearn things and adapt quite quickly. So we need to be able to really give our students skills that will help them outside of the classroom in the wider world. And those skills are not particularly related to any particular subject. This could be something that skills that a geography teacher helps students to develop, a history teacher helps students to develop, and also as English teachers, we help students to develop. Learning to learn is one of them, but you will have heard already, I think, about the Cambridge competencies, life competencies framework. And just to put learning to learn into context a little bit, or into its position here, these are not in any particular order of priority, but as you've heard before, there are 6 areas that have been under the focus, areas where we need to be helping our students to develop. They are creative thinking, critical thinking, learning to learn, communication, collaboration, and social responsibilities. And I urge you and encourage you to find out more about this after the session or after today's event. But I would like to make the point that as language teachers, we're in a very, very good position to help our students develop all of these skills, because we really are, we want our students to be communicating, we want them to be speaking, we want to give them, as far as possible, authentic practice of the language. And all of these skills involve some degree of communication. So I think in many ways, we're ideally placed to look beyond the classroom, to look beyond their subject matter. Learning to learn itself is the subject of today's, let me just move the session on. Today's session. So learning to learn, what is learning to learn? It's basically about helping our students to become more independent learners. Students, giving them the ability to go away and to carry on the learning process for themselves, to do so in a much more methodical way, to develop particular study skills that will help them in other subjects as well as in English, and as I said, in later life. And it can be broken down into these three broad areas. The first is taking control of your own learning. Then there's developing skills and strategies for learning, and then reflecting on and evaluating your own learning. And these can be broken down further, and we'll look at some examples of how to develop these throughout today's session. Taking control of your own learning could include, for example, setting clear learning goals. Students are much more motivated, or anybody is much more motivated to do something when they know exactly why they're doing it. And if they have the goal established, you know, you can plan towards that goal, and you can also, you'll know by measuring whether you've achieved that goal. In terms of English language, it could be editing your own written work. And I'm going to give you some ideas of how we can help students become better writers and better communicators by self-editing their work. It could be participating in constructing speaking activities. Even with a basic pair work activity, we can have our students become much more engaged and much more, bring much more to a pair work activity. And we'll look at some ways to do that. And choosing ways to practice English outside of class. I'm sure many of you already recommend to your students watching TV series, listening to music, reading. It could be changing your social media settings to English so that they appear in English. There are lots of ways that we can encourage students to practice English outside of class, but quite often maybe they need some advice about how to do that more methodically. In terms of developing skills and strategies for learning, one of the key areas is note-taking, a very useful skill throughout life. And there are lots we can do to help our students take notes more methodically. I don't know about you, but I have some students who take copious notes and they use different colors to underline words and to highlight sections. Others who take quite messy notes, and some who don't really take notes at all. And then even amongst those who do take notes, some of them might review them regularly. Some of them might look at their notebook once in a blue moon. But there's a lot that we can do to encourage our students to really become better note takers, and through that become better learners. And I'm going to give you some ideas with collocations, how to take notes of vocabulary. Reviewing vocabulary regularly and systematically, we'll look at that as well. Using spidergrams and mind maps, so different visual aids to help take notes. And then working out the meaning of unfamiliar words from context. Outside of the classroom, when faced with language that they don't understand and without recourse to a dictionary, being able to infer context, meaning from context is a really key skill that we can help our students develop. And then this is one that I've done with my own students, having them record themselves on their mobile phone so they can listen back to themselves and decide whether they've repeated themselves a lot or if there's any particular areas of pronunciation they feel they need to work on. We're not going to look at this today, but I do encourage those of you who have students old enough to do so, to have students record themselves on their mobile phone, a short 1-minute dialogue or monologue, for example, and then to listen back, make note of what they did well, what they did not so well, and then to repeat the activity. It's a really useful way of self-reflecting. And then talking about reflection, learning to learn can involve keeping track of progress, responding positively to feedback. I think there's, no, and responding positively to feedback. Okay. Before we look at the actual activities, I just want to make clear what learning to learn is not. And I think this is implicit in what I've already said, but it's not grammar. It's not vocabulary per se. It's not pronunciation. It's not language skills, the traditional core skills of speaking, listening, reading, or writing. It's not those things, sorry. It's broader skills that can be applied beyond the English language classroom that students could use in other subjects or more widely. So it's not becoming better at a particular grammatical structure, increasing your vocabulary, improving your pronunciation. Learning to learn will help students become better at those things by themselves. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, let's have a look at taking control of your own learning. Okay, now the one that I said we would look at was self-editing written work, my common mistakes. I think it's quite a typical scenario in teaching that you set your students a writing task, you prepare them for the writing task, they go away and they do the writing task, or they do that writing task in class, they hand it in, it's often full of mistakes, you correct it, you hand it back, the student doesn't really take much notice of the mistakes. And I don't think that's the best use of that process. So we're going to look at something called my common mistakes, where students take a page in their notebook at the beginning of the course, or a couple of pages in the notebook at the beginning of the course, divide it into two columns. And in the left-hand column, they keep notes of their common mistakes, ones that they, as an individual, typically make. And in the right-hand column, they keep a note of what they should write or what they should say. It could also be for speaking. And this can be added to with the teacher's input and assistance, and then used as a reference when students come to write. So here, for example, you have in the My Common Mistakes column, third person S, the student forgets to add it quite a lot, or they confuse don't and doesn't, or haven't has. The student has some problems with the correct use of prepositions, and then some things about spelling or punctuation, and do and make collocations. Many of these will be common to all the students, particularly at the lower levels, not so much at the higher levels, but basically it's an individualized list. And on the right-hand side, the student has a note of what they should be writing. And they use it in the following way. If you imagine you've set a typical speaking task. So here we have a problem page or online forum, and somebody has written into Agony Agnes. Hi, Agony Agnes. I'm worried I'm addicted to social media. I usually post over 100 photos a day online. Is this too many? What can I do? Please help. From Unsnappy Chappy. And the writing task is to imagine, the student has to imagine that they are Agnes, and they need to write a reply to Snappy Chappy, whoever that might be, thanking them for writing and giving them some advice. The student writes this is their first draft, and it's full of mistakes. It's full of typical mistakes. Before handing it into the teacher, the student will then refer to their notebook where they have their common mistakes and go through it quite methodically. So have I used third person S correctly? Have I used don't and doesn't correctly? Because I know I always get this wrong. Have I got any spelling mistakes that I typically make? Have I used prepositions correctly? Because I always get some of those wrong. And hopefully the student will locate their own mistakes. And then having located their own mistakes, you can see them here highlighted in blue. The student will then be able to correct the mistakes before handing it into the teacher. So it's self-editing. And in this way, the student is much more likely to take notice of their own mistakes, to correct it and to learn the correct version than if it comes back on a piece of, on the paper with red pen from the teacher. It's much more cognitively engaging, it's much more independent, and it helps them learn to learn by self-editing their work. There will, of course, be mistakes that they make that they're not aware of, but then that's your role as a teacher to point those out and help them. This is quite useful, my common mistakes. Students can have it open as they write as well, if you have a writing in class, or at home, they can have it open when they're writing at home. And hopefully, as they improve, they'll be able to eliminate some of the common mistakes that they no longer make. And it should help with avoiding fossilized errors. Another very good way to encourage students to become more independent is to use correction codes. Now, some of you may use these, some of you may be familiar with them. Here is a typical correction code. I'm just going to talk you through one if you're not familiar. There is a code for different types of error, different types of mistake. So, for example, 3 exclamation marks for a silly mistake, WW meaning wrong word. There's one for missing word, extra word, a spelling mistake or a spelling error, a grammatical error, a punctuation error, WO for a word order error, and 3 question marks when the student has written something which is just not clear at all and you don't really know what they're trying to say. And a correction code works like this. The student writes the text. Hopefully they've used the My Common Errors columns in their notebook to check for any typical errors they make. And then as the teacher, you annotate the piece of writing. So you go through and you underline areas where the student has made a mistake, and you use the code to indicate what kind of mistake the student has made. So as you'll see at the top, we've got MW for missing word. With most us, it should be most of us. Under hand in it, there's a WO word order error because it should be handed in. Later on, we've got 3 question marks, never return to C, when it's not really clear what the student is trying to say. And of course, oh, there's a missing mistake there, quick, I missed the mistake. And then sometimes a mistake could be one kind of mistake or another. So you can annotate, for example, this could be a word order mistake or a grammar mistake. The student then goes through the writing. This should say word order mistake, sorry. The student then goes through their writing and they have the chance to think about what they've done wrong. So they have an opportunity to engage again before submitting a final draft. And as with the correction, the My Common Mistakes idea, this helps the student to become much more methodical about how they write and begin to edit as they write and begin to think about the kind of mistakes they typically make and try to correct their own errors as they go along, rather than waiting always for the teacher's correction. It's less work when you come to mark the piece of writing, at least the first draft of writing, because you only need to underline and annotate the mistakes. But I do recommend that you encourage students to rewrite the piece of writing. Here is the corrected version, and I'm just going to read it as it pertains to what I'm saying. As teachers, most of us will be familiar with the following scenario. We set our students a writing task. The students then produce the required piece of work and hand it in. Next, the teacher corrects the writings and writes various comments for each student regarding the content of what they have written. In the following lesson, or 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 lessons later, depending on how busy we are, we hand the corrected writings back. Finally, the students take a quick look at the comments and corrections and then put the pieces of paper away, never to be seen again. Not only can this be very frustrating, it is also a wasted opportunity. A correction code helps students to become more autonomous by giving them a chance to consider their own mistakes before writing a final draft. It is an easy thing to do and saves the teacher a lot of time. Why don't you try it? Don't forget also always comment on the content. We don't usually write things unless it's with a reader in mind and a particular objective in mind. So I also always recommend that you comment on the content of what the student has written. These ideas should help the students start to become more independent when it comes to writing. Okay, the idea of correction codes is very familiar to anyone who's used Word or other word processing software, because Microsoft or whatever software you're using will do it automatically. You're probably very familiar with the red squiggly lines or the blue squiggly lines that come up when we type something wrong or something that Microsoft considers wrong. on a word processing program. So students, it's already familiar in everyday life, and it's something that students will probably know of themselves. So in a way, it's just the classroom version of that. And if you want to do it, if you're working online, some of you are probably teaching online. If you have students submitting their work online in a Word document, for example, you can use colors for the code rather than letters. And then establish at the beginning the code with your students, explain it, and use it that way. Don't also forget you can comment with writings. Okay, taking control of your own learning. Let's have a look at participating constructively in speaking activities. Hopefully pair work is a very common part of your teaching repertoire, and as much as possible you have students speaking to each other in order to maximize speaking opportunity and maximize speaking time. But it can often be the case, especially with teenagers, that they sort of go through the motions. They might do an activity quite mechanically. They're not exactly listening to each other, and they're not participating very constructively in the activity. One way you can encourage students to engage more and become more independent in that sense is to introduce a kind of reflection activity. Here's an example. Students at the end of the lesson, they think back about the times when they've interacted with their partner in pair work, and they think about the following questions. During today's lesson, how often have you looked at your partner while speaking, listened carefully to your partner, responded to something your partner said, spoken only in English with your partner, corrected your partner when they made a mistake? And then they can consider most of the time, sometimes not as often as I could have done, and not very often at all. This doesn't need to be done every lesson or after every pair work activity. But if you introduce a kind of self-reflective activity like this, and you repeat it every so often, I have found that students start to, if they're not doing any of these things, they start to do these things more, especially if you remind them that you're going to look at this after the activity or perhaps at the end of the lesson. And also students start to become a little bit more objective about how they are really engaging in a pair work activity. So it's a kind of scaffolding for them to be able to develop those skills of participating better. The last one in particular, corrected your partner when they made a mistake. It's very rare that you'll have two students together who know exactly the same vocabulary. Pardon me. So to get them to feel that they can actually help one another and correct one another and give feedback to one another is a really useful thing that we can do in class. And this is one way that you can do it. But you can adapt that as you see fit to whatever criteria you think it's important for the students to focus on. In Own It, which I co-authored, there are learn to learn pages in each unit, and some of them focus on this kind of pair work, how to do pair work better activity. Here's an example from Own It level 2, unit 6. And here at the bottom right-hand corner is some language that students can use to give feedback. So I like the way you, for example, I like the way you described your holiday, or why don't you add some details next time? You made some mistakes with the past simple, for example, or you used the second conditional. That was nice. So giving students the actual language to help each other as well is useful. Okay. Let's just move on. Now we're going to look at note-taking. I said at the beginning that note-taking was one of the key skills, and I recommend that you give your students help with different ways to take notes. It can seem like it's a very straightforward skill. Students do it all the time, so we don't need to really focus on it. But actually, there are many different ways to take notes. There are many ideas for how to take notes effectively. And we can really guide our students and give them ideas, some of which will work for some students, some of which will work for others. But I think it's a useful use of class time to occasionally give ideas of how students can record vocabulary, for example, or take notes that will help them to learn and to review. So we're going to look at recording collocations, and I'm going to give you 3 ideas that you can use with collocations. The first is very simple. It's a collocation line. So here we're looking at two words, two verbs that collocate with promise. You have the main word to one side of the line and the other words that collocate with it to the left. You'll have seen this, I'm sure, in many textbooks. So we have keep a promise, break a promise. It's a tiny thing to do, but it's more methodical, I think, than the student having keep a promise written down in one page of the notebook and then a million miles away somewhere else in the notebook, break a promise. You could add, as you go through the course, the next time they learn make a promise, for example, they can just add to that notation and keep everything in the same place. And not only does it help them keep the vocabulary in the same place and to review the vocabulary, it really helps to encourage the idea of learning vocabulary, of learning collocation as a key part of vocabulary. That's a collocation line. Here is a collocation column. Here we've got make and do. Often at the beginning of the year, I'll have students divide one page of their notebook into two columns with make and do, where they can add make and do collocations as they learn them. We might do a few at the beginning as a game where I read them out and they decide in pairs which column the word needs to go in. So they already start to collect them. Here we've got make a noise, make friends, make a mistake, etc. Do well, do badly, do the shopping. And then as, pardon me, as we go through the course, they can add make the most of something in the correct column. Later in another lesson, they learn do a good job, do a bad job, they add it there. Make a mess, do somebody a favor. So as you can see, all the vocabulary is kept in the same place and students begin to, I think, take better notes. So we've got a collocation line and collocation columns. Here's one more idea. Sorry. This one is a kind of very simple spidergram, which is a very nice visual way to learn vocabulary or to show ideas. Here we've got a common verb in the middle, leave, and the different meanings on the arms of the spidergram. So we've got phrases which mean departing, the train leaves at 6 p.m, to leave early, to leave late, exiting, to leave home in the morning, to leave school, finishing, to leave your job, to leave school, and other phrases that collocate with leave, to leave the TV on, to leave the computer on, to leave something at home, leave me alone. And again, this helps students to concentrate on collocation and meaning, and they can add to it as they go through the course. So maybe they will add under departing, to leave on time, under exiting, to leave work, under other phrases, to leave a message for someone, and then finishing, to leave university, for example. This can be done with the delexicalized verbs, verbs which are very common in collocation. So get, make, do, leave, take is another one, have, for example. So you could have a separate page or a section of the notebook where students keep all this vocabulary together. My recommendation is that you introduce these ideas and then you let students pick and choose which ones they prefer to do. And some might find them very useful, some less so, but at least they will be aware of the different things they can do. We aren't able to, this is just for you to look at a set of vocabulary all mixed up, which you can do as a practice activity in class for students to think about those three ideas, the lines, the columns, and the spidergram. I would give students this vocabulary. The presentation will be available later if you want to return to this. And you could ask students, how would you group and record these collocations? Would it be with a line in 2 or 3 columns or with a spidergram? And then in pairs, students can talk about that. They can discuss how they would group them, how they would record them, and they should come up with, for example, 3 columns for the sports, which would be do, play, and go, and then a collocation line with friend. So you have a close friend, school friend, make a friend, an old friend, and finally a spidergram with have, and that can be subdivided into have with things to do with speaking or talking, have a word with somebody, have a conversation, have a chat, words to do with food, have a snack, have something to eat, have breakfast, and then words to do with experience, have a good time, have a bad time, have the time of your life. So you can give students an opportunity to practice as well, how they might divide up vocabulary. I also recommend, as a way to help them in terms of learning to learn, to, as well as collecting students' homework in, collecting their notebooks every so often, maybe once a term, just to see how they're keeping notes. Are they being methodical? Is there any advice you can give them? And to give some feedback you can write in the notebook, but just to let students know that that is a tool they should be using, and that you will look at it and you will give them some advice about how to improve. Okay, let's look next at, I have to move the Zoom bar away to see the developing skills and strategy for learning. Again, still, we're going to look at flashcards. Flashcards are maybe not ideal at the moment with COVID, and we're not allowed to share materials, for example, but they are a tried and tested method, and students can make their own flashcards, particularly at lower levels for vocabulary they want to learn, or you can collect a group of flashcards for the class to use. But I'm just going to give you some ideas of different ways that you can make flashcards. So here we've got a gapped collocation. I was bitterly something when I heard the news. Here's another gapped phrasal verb. Hopefully, I looked this up on Google yesterday, so if it doesn't make much sense in Bulgarian, please blame Google Translate. A picture, or again, another gapped collocation or expression. I'd just like you to think for a moment. You can type in the chat with the number what you think the missing words might be. Let me see if I can. I don't know if anyone's able to type in chat, and I'll show you in a second what would be on the flip side of the collocations. Okay. Well, let's go through them. So obviously the first one is bitterly disappointed. Oh, we do have okay, we have some responses coming into the chat. Okay. Oh, good. I think my Bulgarian was okay. Yeah. Okay, let's have a little look through. Number two, we've seen could be to hang out or to go out with friends. The one that I have is to hang out, to raise funds or to raise money. Hopefully that's correct. Number four is just a picture for alarm clock, but it could be an entire expression. Some of you have put the alarm clock goes off. And the last one is people on the margins of society. So I think often when we think of flashcards, we tend to think of either a picture and the word, or a translation and the word. But there are different ways that you can use flashcards, and you can encourage students to make their own. And you do need to give them some assistance on how to make good flashcards. So just to give you an idea, here are two possibilities of a flashcard. The message was loud, something clear, and the message was something and clear. Obviously, the first one is not very good because the missing word is and. The second one actually tests the knowledge of the collocation, loud and clear. So you can give students advice on how to create flashcards as well. Once they've created them, there are different ways to use them. And we're going to look briefly at something called spaced repetition. Some of you might use online language learning apps like Duolingo or Anki or Quizlet. I think Memrise is another one. And many of them use the idea in their algorithms of spaced repetition, which is the idea that we learn better when we space out the learning. So not the kind of learning that students often do the night before an exam, where they try to cram everything into their heads. I'm sure we've all done it in the past as well, everything into our heads for the next morning, and then the moment the exam is over, it sort of magically leaves the brain. But if you space out the repetition, and that when we're just beginning to forget something is a key time to try to remember it. The effort involved in remembering something that we've started to forget but haven't completely forgotten seems to activate the memory well. And you can mimic this in class in different ways. And I'm just going to suggest one way that you could do this. Let's imagine that the student has made some flashcards. In the first lesson, they make them. They make 20 flashcards. The student tests themselves. And then they divide the flashcards into two groups, the ones that are easy to remember and the ones that are hard to remember. In the next lesson that you teach, you ask the students to test themselves with the difficult flashcards. And then they can further subdivide those into easy now and still hard. Then not the following lesson, but 2 lessons later, so that they've begun to forget a bit, they test themselves with the still hard flashcards until they can remember all of them. And then you put the flashcards away, you wait until 3 lessons later, and then put them all back together again, and the students can test them, and hopefully they'll be able to remember all of them. Just to show you how that might work on a timetable, if you imagine that they have students have lessons on a Tuesday and Thursday, on this Thursday the 9th, they make the flashcards. The first time they use them is the following lesson. Then they skip a lesson without using them. The 21st, they use them. And then there are 2 more lessons where they don't use them, and they use them on the Thursday. So the intervals are of increasing length between when you use the flashcards. If you look online, there are different ways you can mimic this space repetition effect in class. But this is one suggestion that you might like to use for students to make flashcards. Of course, they can make more than 20, but 20 seems to be a good number to start with, and they can add to that. Okay. Further developing skills and strategies for learning is a really, really key skill that we all use, and we hope our students will develop, and that's to work out meaning of unfamiliar words from context. And I think quite often we tell our students to try to guess the meaning from context, which is a good thing to do, but it doesn't particularly help students, show students a methodical way to do that. So a very simple way you can do that, I'm going to explain. Here's a text about clothes. I don't like tight jeans. I prefer baggy jeans because they're comfortable. I have lots of t-shirts with long sleeves, t-shirts with short sleeves, but I don't like t-shirts with logos. I don't like pictures or writing on my clothes. I love trainers. I have big feet, so it can be difficult to find my size, but my new trainers fit really well. They're the perfect size. Now, imagine you want your students to guess the meaning from context of the following words, which I've highlighted in red: baggy, sleeves, logos, and fit. A very simple way you can encourage students to think about this methodically is, first, what part of speech is the word? In this case, is it a noun? Is it a verb or an adjective? Because that will help tell the student what the word means. Secondly, what clues about the meaning can I find in the text? So we can work out that baggy is an adjective, and it probably means the opposite of tight, and it's connected to comfortable. We can work out that sleeves is a noun. You can have long ones, you can have short ones. If the student doesn't know the word logos, they can still work out that it's a noun, and it's something to do with no pictures or no writing, or pictures or writing rather. And fit here, we can work out it's a verb. The student's talking about, or the person is talking about size. They should say size, not size, sorry, the perfect size. So to think about it a little bit more methodically, students can begin to work out the meaning of those words. This is taken from Own It, level 1, unit 6. This is again from Own It. And then there's a practice text for the students with something about jewelry. So really giving our students really simple, methodical ways to begin to approach unfamiliar words in context. Again, a skill that will help them outside of the classroom. Although I did try to say to my students that imagine that you're at a party and you don't have your teacher or the textbook or a dictionary available to work out, you're chatting to someone, and they all told me that in 2021, that's not a problem because you just open your mobile phone and get Google to do it. So I'm not sure if it seems as relevant to them, but it is. Okay, finally, reflecting on and evaluating your own learning. Here's a very simple kind of reflective activities you can do with younger learners or younger teenagers. They can think about how much English they've been speaking in class, and they can decide which of the smileys they want to fill in, either the kind of sad face, who hasn't spoken anything, the neutral space, who thinks some but not much, the happy face, lots and lots, and the really happy face with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. I try to do this with them, not every lesson, but every few lessons, so that they begin to reflect on how much English they're using in class, how much they're participating. You can adapt the question, you can adapt the different categories. My advice with this kind of reflective activity would be to always use an even number of options. If you only have 3 options, human nature will tend to choose the middle option. So if you have 6 or 4, that tends to be better than 3 or 5. And I have found that students, the more they do this kind of activity, it might seem a little bit counterintuitive at first, or they might want the teacher to tell them how they've done. But the more you encourage students to self-reflect, the more they begin to develop, I think, an objectivity about how they've done and an honesty, at least in the students I've been working with. At the beginning, they may say lots and lots and lots and lots when really they haven't made much effort. But gradually over time, they begin to become a bit more, I think, self-reflective and objective. And you can refer them to previous reflection activities so that you can encourage them to improve by saying, for example, okay, last time you said some but not much. We're going to look at this again at the end of today's class. Let's try to do better this time. So students also get that motivating sense of progress. You can also ask them to think about what they've learned by boarding sentence stems and simply having them complete them, either as a speaking activity or in the notebook. So today I've learned how to, that could be a grammatical thing. I've learned how to use the second conditional. It could be a more general thing. I've learned how to order food in a restaurant. I'm getting better at, and whatever it might be. Next time I'm going to, that could be try to use a particular word or grammatical structure. I'm going to speak more, or I'm going to ask my partner more questions, whatever it might be. And with responding to your feedback as a teacher, thanks, what else could I do? So different ways that you can get the student to think about the lesson. For those of you who are teaching online, this lends itself very, very well to the poll function on Zoom, and also the anonymity of the poll function on Zoom. Here are 2 examples of questions you can put onto a poll that are similar to things we've looked at. How much English did I speak today? None, a little, some, but not as much as I could have done, and a lot. And how well did I do? Did I work with my partner? Not very well, quite well, well, or very well. Okay, so students enjoy the interaction of the poll, and also for those who are maybe shy or timid, the anonymity of the poll option lets them be a bit more honest. But I do strongly encourage you to get your students to self-reflect. I think I've kind of zipped through because I'm up to questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. If anybody has any questions. Sorry, that was I spoke rather fast, I believe. Nice.
No questions at the moment.
No.
Given the time we've got, then if anyone wants to ask questions now, there is an opportunity.
Yeah. Sorry, I speak really fast when I'm nervous. So I think it was different to when I timed it. Okay.
No problem at all, Dan.
Yes, the presentation will be available, I believe, afterwards. I've given permission to share it. So yeah. And I do recommend that people look through the Cambridge Life Competencies framework, because it goes into lots of detail to individual language points or individual skills that are not abstract and the students can pick up. So it might be, for example, recording collocations or responding to your partner. And it will probably suggest a lot of things that teachers are already doing, but contextualizes it very well. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dan.
The final slide. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And if anyone does have any further questions, we can always collect them and refer back to you. If
sure, I'd be happy to answer them.
So welcome back to everyone. I hope you've had a chance to recharge your batteries and grab something to eat, perhaps. It's lunchtime here. The skies have just opened. There's a big clap of thunder over me a moment ago, so hopefully that won't interfere with any of our electricity supply.
It's nice and sunny where I am.
It's sunny, and you're only about, what, 10 miles away, aren't you?
Yes, we are, yes.
Yeah, it's literally flood. The road is beginning to flood. Sudden downpour. Okay, so we'll hang on just for a couple of minutes for people to get back and start on at 1:45. And I'm delighted that we've got Stanka and Elena with us. I can see you're there, so yeah, I hope you're prepared and ready. And you'll be doing some smart screen swapping between you, won't you? Because yeah, I'm guessing you're in different places, right?
Yeah, we're a few miles apart as well. Working from home.
Yeah, and Stanka, I was really interested to read that you have a master's degree in ancient history and Hebrew from the University of Wales. Is that the part of University of Wales in Aberystwyth or one of the others?
Could you repeat the question?
Can you not hear me properly? The University of Wales, where your first degree came from, which town was that? In Aberystwyth?
Well, it had some. Well, I took it as a distance learning.
Ah, right. Okay.
I was living in Prague, Czech Republic.
Okay, so truly multinational.
Yes.
I was just fascinated by the kind of rather unusual combination of ancient history and Hebrew. It's must be one of the more unusual backgrounds for an English teacher.
Yeah, I'm a strange person.
But it all adds to the rich tapestry of experience, which is important for any teacher. Anyway, Stanka, you've got nearly 20 years of teaching experience, along with that. And Elena, you're a Cambridge examiner.
Yeah.
And a SALSA teacher. So, and I understand that you've been, both of you, using Open World with first certificate students.
Oh, yes, indeed. We took up Open World B2 FC last year. And we are actually thrilled that we'll be talking about it, because our team is very enthusiastic about using this textbook and this series, and we're very much looking forward to implementing the C1, which we've been informed that it's just arrived at our partners here in CLET, Sofia. So
that's fantastic. And obviously we've got new test and train as well coming with the C1 advanced level. So even more use of the Cambridge One platform with more exam practice for mobile use. Okay, well, I think we probably can kick off. We'll be monitoring the Q&A again for questions that you would like to ask the speakers, and we'll put those to them at the end of the session. And obviously anything else is in chat. You're very welcome to chat, but I can't guarantee that Stanka or Elena will be looking at the chat when they're juggling with their technology. So thanks very much. We're looking forward to the presentation and see you on the other side.
Thank you, Duncan. Good afternoon. My name's Elena Georgieva, one of the founders of British Lab Language Centre Sofia. I'd like to welcome everyone. When our partners from CLET got in touch and asked us to say a few words about our experience with using the new official Cambridge exam preparation series, we were thrilled. As a Cambridge exam preparation centre, we take our work seriously and go through a painstaking procedure anytime we choose books for our students. Being a small-scale language center, we enjoy the freedom and flexibility to choose and implement the best educational materials on the market. Since for all of us on our team, sharing is caring, we jumped at the opportunity to present at Cambridge Day Bulgaria this year. At a conference in Sofia nearly a decade ago, Jeremy Hammer was talking about the challenges of using new technologies in language teaching. And there's an image from that conference that's been lingering in the back of my mind in the past few days. It's the image of the good teacher who's able to teach with just a stick in the sand. Unfortunately, nowadays, even good teachers can't do that simply because neither the sand nor the stick, the student or the teachers are in one and the same room any longer. We are distanced as these young students on a beach somewhere in Spain, or like this child being taught at home. So distance teaching, #learning has brought us apart to the point that we've turned into faces on the screen for our students, for the majority of them. Thus, it's becoming increasingly difficult to connect or stay connected. Even a quick glance at the program for Cambridge Day Bulgaria this year confirms that distance learning is an issue and a reality for most of us these days and seems to be here to stay. The changed circumstances require new tools, new approaches, and new solutions to the newly posed problems. And being teachers during a pandemic, we're very much aware of that. Do you mind using the chat box for like 30 seconds, not more than that? Provided we were in one and the same room, I would have asked you a question. I would have been happy to hear you live, but let's use what we've got. So teaching exam preparation is demanding, time-consuming, and could put a lot of strain on both students and teachers. True or false? I would really appreciate your comment in the question and answer section. So real quick, just one letter, T or F. Yeah. Wow, I'm getting lots of true answers. Yes, indeed, all of us know that it is demanding. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of preparation. On top of that, you get numerous writings you need to go through, especially if you use the strategy that Vincent mentioned earlier, when you go back and forth between you and the teachers with one and the same writing, first draft, second draft. It takes a lot of time indeed, and it does put a lot of strain on both students and teachers, not to mention now during this online ordeal we're going through. My next question is about, if you would bear with me a moment. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to reshare the app because of the chat box, which is open. So yes. What about the transition between young learners courses, general English classes, and exam preparation? So on the one hand, we have young learners classes, general English classes, and on the other, exam preparation. Is this transition usually smooth? So once again, could you please text true or false in the chat? Should be so. Yes, indeed. I couldn't agree more. It should be. And yes, more ambiguous answers this time. Yes, no, it's, yeah, true. This transition should be smooth, but it is not always smooth. And it depends on the choice of materials. It depends on a lot of things. And if you've been teaching exam preparation for years, you've probably noticed that between levels B1 plus and B2 exam preparation, FC level, there's always been a gap. There's always been a gap. And it takes time students to adapt to the requirements of exam preparation courses. Well, this is my opinion, but it's also opinion. This is also something we've been discussing with colleagues for years now, and now we think we've found a solution to this problem, and we're about to share it. So let's go. Let's move forward to the last question. So, choosing textbooks for levels A1 to C2, which fit the framework of individual schools or centers, fit in the CFR and meet the needs of individual students is a real challenge, or the ultimate challenge for every educational institution. Would you side with that? True or false? So building up a framework across the levels, which moves from A1, very young learners, through teenagers, up to C2 classes, is a challenge. Okay. True. Lots of materials and systems nowadays. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And the process of choosing a textbook at any level is not an easy one. We go through the stage of visiting our partners in different publishing houses, discussing the options with them, explaining what we need, borrowing textbooks, browsing through the textbooks, usually during the summer months, then implementing the new material. And then again, we go through a process of trial and error until we make sure that everything fits in smoothly. Okay, so I'll give the floor to my colleague, Vladeva now, who's going to tell you more about a great solution we have found for our exam preparation groups. It's a brand new solution, it's out there, and I'm sure that if at the end of this presentation, you will feel at least a fraction as excited about it as we do, me and Tanya.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. I will start from here. Good afternoon, my name is Stanka Vladeva, a teacher at British Lab as well. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this inspiring event. As teachers, we share common hardships, experience similar problems, and face the same difficulties, probably now more than ever, I think. However, as you all know, challenges and closed doors can trigger events and decisions that could bring positive changes and eventually a positive outcome in our lives, but not without pain and always after careful consideration. I was lucky enough to have valuable colleagues together with whom I was able to overcome the initial shock from the lockdown. We quickly found an effective solution for our online distance learning. And I'm not talking only about finding a platform to teach from. before everything started to collapse as an avalanche, we found an excellent course book without fully appreciating it at that stage. But I think we've been intuitive in the sense we decided to choose that book before we could appreciate its value. The title of our joint presentation with Mrs. Elena Georgieva is Open Up the World for Exam Preparation Students, and it is actually a reference to the title of Cambridge Exam Preparation Series. And as you can see on this slide, on the screen, Open World A2 Key, B1 Preliminary, B2 First, and recently published C1 Advanced. What if we can't go back to normal? Because we used to talk like, okay, we'll go back to normal. What if we can't? What if we can't go back to the old reality, at least? I think that distance learning is here to stay in one form or another. Having this in mind, we need new teaching methods and approaches, and I can openly share and boldly claim even that Open World provides them, and it's the best tool one could hope for. With this course book we've been teaching for a year, B2 First, the transition from the classroom to home office became not just more bearable, but actually enjoyable for my students and me. And believe me, this is not an exaggeration, it's a fact. Let's be practical and show you the advantages of using Open World for your teaching. How exactly can we open up the world for our students in order to be able to motivate our students, to inspire them, to make them proactive and creative? We need to be this kind of people for them. Honestly, after a year of hard work, fighting with technology, software, endless checking of homework, extensive search on the internet for additional ideas that will suit the online teaching, and so many other things, using Open World course book came as a life-saving tool. My presentation will look at B2 First in particular, from the teacher's point of view, and what could be of use and help for them. Now in more details. Advantages of Open World. I've put them together here. It's well organized. It has innovative methodology. It is stress-free. It takes you further. It's easy to navigate. And now we will go one by one. It's well organized. When you open the book, the first thing that you become aware of is the clean and interesting layout. The material is well organized, colorful, and attractive, not crowded, and it's easy on the eyes. The quality photos enhance the process of learning the grammar and do not in any way diminish the importance of the lesson. The layout provokes my curiosity. As a result, I always want to see what is on the next page and what is the next topic actually. Well, the student book has the following section. It has 14, I will come back to that slide, but as you can see, the second point from this well-organized is the student's book structure and unit structure. So let me move on to the next slide. What is the structure of the unit? You have warm-up exercises as all the textbooks as well, grammar and grammar on the move, something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, phrasal verb builder at the end, listening, reading, and vocabulary, writing and writing bank. The writing bank is at the end. Speaking and speaking bank. Real world, that's something I will refer to again. Push yourself. exam preparation plus detailed exam explanation. Okay. These are some of the new sections in the course book. Grammar on the move. It has a new unique QR code that you can scan with your phone, push yourself, as I already mentioned. Real world, exam focus, exam checks, phrases you might use and hear, they're connected with the real world videos, and so many other advantages. So moving on. All the structure of the course book leads me to the next important advantage. It is innovative in its methodology. Methodology should be one of the most important things to be considered when teaching or designing a course book. The material in English remains the same, but the methodology should be subjected to constant revision and renewal. When designing and deciding the course book content, why not adopt a bolder approach, like the one we have here? Starting from A2 key, one couldn't help but notice that the grammar is rather more quickly introduced when compared with other textbooks. Of course, this is because Open World is for Cambridge exam preparation. For example, A2 introduces zero and first conditionals as well as passive. The rest of the course books continue to review, build up and enrich the knowledge for the tenses in more settled, relaxed way, but at the same time with a highly effective pace. It is a spiral way of introducing and accumulating knowledge, I think. The B2 course book includes the most complicated tenses and takes the pressure off C1 from learning difficult grammar in the last minute just before the exam. We already have Open World C1 Advanced available in Bulgaria, as Elena mentioned. Honestly, it surpasses and at the same time confirmed my expectations because the topics of the unit are even more inspiring, up-to-date, thought-provoking, and addressing questions that have been raised recently. C1 repeats the modals, perfect tenses, conditionals, and reported speech. The vocabulary focuses mainly on collocations, multi-verb words, adverbs, phrases, but overall, C1 is extremely practical. It basically says, let's be serious about speaking and writing. You really need to become an expert in these. So as you can see, Open World not only prepares your students for the level they've been studying, but also for the Cambridge exam. You won't be needing any other preparation book. I've already mentioned the relevant topics. They're different for each unit, which will come as no surprise for you because every course book has them, but they easily introduce the new grammar and the vocabulary. And yes, all the course books have this tendency, but these series have taken them on a whole new level. In this way, the hard to swallow grammar particles get easily dissolved. This is the trick of having a good system, actually, which unties your hands and takes your mind off the pressure of studying for the test. Which brings me to the next slide. It's stress-free. And while you enjoy this beautiful scenery, with the photo I've taken from Kotor, Montenegro, I want to talk about this section, Real World. It's a section that transports you and your students from the classroom or your home even to different places, introducing different cultures. This enriching experience contributes to enjoying the language for its worth and because of its wide usage, not just for the test again. All videos, listening, and their exercises are presented in an interactive way, making very good use of contemporary technology. The digital functions make the job of the teacher more pleasant and help the students learn faster. They get involved in the process. It provides so many ideas that you don't need to go looking for them elsewhere. There is a famous slogan, or I should say a wish for the teachers. May your coffee be strong and your students be calm. Well, we don't want calm students, actually. And with all the available options in these course books, we don't need a strong coffee either. We can be confident that the lesson is interesting and that the students are involved in it. The level of stress is greatly reduced as well from the fact that all exercises have links for immediate access to answers. And I'm about to show you that in a minute. Great ideas that save your time and make the lesson dynamic and interesting for the students. Next advantage, it takes you further, as promised in the course books. Not only that it gives your students the foundation for the level they study, but it challenges them, it pushes their limits. How? Through first, push yourself. A section that gradually introduces the new grammar and vocabulary from the next level. Push yourself creates anticipation about what is ahead, which further motivates the students and makes the future content more familiar and less stressful. I want to share with you a feedback from some of our students studying Open World B2 first. As you're about to see, they're all so different from each other. We simply adore them. Enjoy the video compilation.
Hello, I'm David. In the Cambridge Open World textbook, I like the most that it's rich in information. The words are also very easy to learn. But the thing that grabbed me the most in the textbook is that there is an option for online practicing.
In all of the Open World student books, I really like the QR code videos because you will learn new facts and much more.
The course book gives students an immediate sense of purpose and clear learning objectives. It provides core grammar and vocabulary input alongside a mix of skills. Speaking lessons offer a unique combination of functional language, pronunciation, and conversation skills along with helpful videos. The overall cultural tone is appropriate for people all ages. Diverse and interesting topics attract students' attention and motivate them to broaden their horizons. It's a real pleasure for me to study from this textbook.
Hi, about the student's book and the workbook. I really like it because it pushed me a lot to practice my English skills, and it's really, it's a must to know English in this century. So it's great for me. The tip that I want to tell you is the videos that explain the grammar, which I like, or a little bit childish for me. I think in this level, they need to be more for teenagers or something like that. But yeah, although I like it a lot, and I'm happy that I study with this particular book. And bye.
Hi, my name is Konstantin. I am 15 years old and currently taking a B2 language course with British Lab. We're using the open world textbooks, which help me learn English in the most enjoyable way. The material is very interesting and pretty up to date, which is always a good thing. Everything is very well structured and made easy to learn. I can assure you that with the proper preparation, you could definitely pass your exams with flying colors.
Okay.
They're so sweet, aren't they? Some of them are so laid back, like blah, 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 and others have gone through the yeah, they've even written some words, and they seem to be taken it very seriously, that feedback thing. But they're very honest. They're very honest. I mean,
yes,
they mean it.
Yes, and they've written their own words. The last thing from this section, it takes you further, is the exam preparation, which unfolds quite naturally, and it is interwoven with the practical application of it. It is consisted of exam focus, which are tips and facts and exercises to prepare you for the exam training and exam checks that gives you information about the format of the exam and make sure you remember that information. And the last thing, it's easy to navigate. I've already mentioned grammar on the move, a video grammar animation, which everyone can watch in class or at home because it is provided with QR code. The video explains the grammar and in a more vivid way and provides all the necessary example. And the last thing, presentation plus software. Everything you need only within the click of your mouse. Links with instant access to listening and videos. And presentation plus includes the student's book, workbook, teacher's book, and helpful links. Let's have a closer look at that exceptional and easy to use tool. You already have heard this word a few times. If you don't remember anything else from my presentation, remember this word only, easy. Easy to use, easy to navigate. So again, sharing my screen, and this time sharing the presentation plus software. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, okay. Let me say that first, on top of the presentation plus, you have links to student book, workbook, teacher's book. Let me change it even for you to see. Teacher's book as well, very easy access, and some links. This is the first thing I want to show you. The second thing is here at the bottom, table of contents. It gives you quick and easy access to all the units, map of the book at the beginning, how to use this book, and all the lessons. I focused on unit 1. I'm about to show you that unit to you, but let me say as well that after each 3 lessons, 3 units, you have progress checks. And then at the end, you have communication activities, grammar reference. Let me show them to you. Communication activities for the different parts of Cambridge exam with a lot of explanations, examples, model answers, everything you need. Let me move this here to change the slides. This is, and then you have grammar reference, again, with very valuable, very useful explanation and tables and additional exercises.
Actually, if I may add that the feedback from students on the grammar section of the book is very positive. They seem to find their way around very quickly. So some portions of it can be assigned for homework. They could, you could flip the classroom in a way. and they could do some research on their own. You don't have to be there helping them and holding their hands throughout the process.
This is the writing bank, model answers with comments on the side for the essay, a key language for essays, email or letter, review, article, report, and then the speaking bank, which is really helpful with all these beautiful, beautiful photos and model answers as well. Something that we really know, because the students need to see how it should look like. Okay, and then for the different parts of the speaking as well. Then phrasal verb builder, as I mentioned, and B2 first exam information, everything here. So let's go back to Unit 1. We'll move this again, Unit 1. I want to show you some of the links. Warm-up exercises at the beginning, vocabulary, everything that you need. If you have listening, you can just click the button here and it opens the listening. You can immediately listen, or you can click on this arrow and it opens the window for you with interactive exercises. I will play just a short excerpt from the listening. If it's not something that you want to test your students, you can also share the screen and look at the dialogue. You can show the dialogue to your students as well. So let me play.
Track 6, Unit 1, page 18, listening, exercise 2.
Hello, Ali.
Hi, Chloe.
Ali, I'm going to get myself in shape.
You're not overweight.
Well, I do need to slim down a little.
So
anyway, as you know,
I think that's enough. You can also show the answers. It's very easy. You just click the button. And then if I could show you grammar on the move, that you don't need to scan it. You just press here and watch the video with the explanation and the examples.
Grammar on the move. Gerunds and infinitives.
Let's forward it a bit.
I did, yes, but I don't have my racket. I remember putting it in my bag last night, but it's not here.
At the end,
I've stopped drinking energy drinks. We can also use the infinitive or verb plus gerund after the same verb. Notice how the meaning changes.
Okay, that's enough, I think, to give you the idea. And then if you want to underline something or just circle something, you can just press here the pencil. You can choose the color. And let's say if you want to point something at, or circle, you can write even something and then hide or delete the notes. You have these options as well. Just bear with me a little bit more. Here it's the section push yourself that leads you to the next level, or at least introduces the level gradually. And the last thing I want to show, this is the exam focus, the way you are going to see the exercises or the different parts from the exam, the way you are going to see on the actual exam. The photos, comparing, contrasting photos. And the last part of the unit is this real world, where you can play the video, for example, here, and watch it. Something happened with, I know what happened. I have to close this, yes. Okay, so you have the videos as well.
It offers a varied program, including operas, plays, ballets, and musical concerts. After sightseeing, why not find a relaxing spot by the riverside? Or if you're hungry, how about enjoying one of Switzerland's classic dishes, cheese fondue.
Okay, and again, you have exercises. You can show all the answers at once, or you can show them one by one. And it's something students really enjoy. I find this tool really helpful, inspiring, easy to use. I'm not so good at technology, but it was very easy for me to learn how to do these things. It takes just a day to learn how to do it. And you can show to your students the course book in case someone has forgotten to take it even. And it's very good for distance learning. So Ellie, back to you.
Thank you, Tanya. As Tanya demonstrated, Open World Presentation Plus, the Presentation Plus, is super easy. It is time saving as well. It leaves you plenty of free time for checking writings, of course, after all teaching exam prep. As for the classroom time, it allows you to go through homework or classroom activities quickly by sharing the answers with your class, and thus frees up plenty of time for focusing on any problems your students might have with the target language for the particular class. It's intuitive as well. It takes very little time and effort to explore and get used to its functionalities. So even teachers who have little or no experience with distance learning, with distance teaching, have absolutely nothing to fear. From a student's perspective, Presentation Plus is both visual and engaging, and it bridges the gap. It bridges the gap. To me, this is something which matters a lot. It bridges the gap between students and their teacher, which is indispensable, especially under the new circumstances we all find ourselves in. Over to the teacher's book. Now it comes, I saw a question in the chat box about links and online resources. Now the teacher's book comes with a downloadable resource pack. First about the book, if you are a bit old school like myself, I just need to hold the book in my hands. The instructions in there are clear. The ideas, the guidance, everything comes in a step-by-step approach, stage by stage, for every stage in your lesson. The downloadable access saves you the errand of downloading CDs. Most laptops don't even have CD-ROM readers. So downloading the materials directly to your computer is the thing. So you can download your audio, video, and your photocopyable materials as well. The teacher's book contains background information, audio scripts, model answers, and extension tasks. The codes, the downloadable thing, gives you access to speaking videos, which are at a high level, which is nice because some of the YouTube videos available are do not always show strong students. So taking the test, which I think is quite important. And there are also 2 whole practice tests. Now, in this case, we're talking about the FCE course book, but I presume that, actually, I checked that the new book will offer similar options. Then let's move on to the test generator, which I am going to demonstrate in a minute. through the years, we've tried and tested lots of test makers, and we even remember the times when we used to design our tests, which would take a lot of we would have to pull a lot of all-nighters or all-nighters, and now it is unbelievable how easy that is. You see it in a second, you see it yourselves. So the test generator contains ready-made tests, that is unit tests in 2 versions, a standard and a plus version, which is recommended for either stronger students, the plus version for the more ambitious and stronger classes or individual students. The ready-made tests also contain term tests, 3 of them, each of them coming again in the standard and plus variant, and of course end of year tests again in standard and plus versions. Now over to the customizable part. You've got the freedom with just a few clicks, and I mean it, with just a few clicks, to select which questions to keep and which to dismiss. So literally all it takes to create a test is to select the questions, download them, and either send them directly to your students or print them if you are lucky enough to be teaching face-to-face. So let me just share the test generator. What I love about it is the simplicity, the simple design. Now you should be able to see it. As you can see, it's not crammed with options or questions or anything. If you are looking for a unit test, we'll just click here. You must be doing unit 10 by now. I'm a bit behind though. So unit 10, let's take unit 10. And let's generate a standard test. Now it's already downloaded on my computer. I'd like to share the folder. I'm going to have to reshare the screen though. It takes a while, but you should be able to see the folder now, right? Yes. Now it opens up, and in it, you see the test, the answer key, and the best of all, the listening, which you will require. So we've just generated, we're ready. I mean, we could start the test in 3 seconds. We have everything we need at just 2 clicks. So I'll close this for, I don't know if we have time for seeing the test, but it's just a standard, proper, high quality test ready to go. Can you see this screen now? Because it's probably I'm probably gonna have to reshare again. Yeah, that's.
We can see your screen.
Yeah, yeah, here it is.
Yes.
So it's a proper test, as you can see. It's got everything there. It's got the points per exercise, vocabulary, grammar section, pronunciation, everything that we need. So now I'd like to close that and go back to the test maker because it gives you more freedom to choose what to keep and what not to keep. So if you want to select the questions, now just let me know if you could see the screen again with the text. Yeah, there we go. So if you click on manual, you see the different sections, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, with just one click on this kind of notepad to the side, all the questions open up. So you may browse through them one by one and decide literally with just one click which one you want to keep and which one you don't want to use with a particular group or even a student. You could it gives you such freedom that you could modify the test for students with dyslexia or slower paced students which require more attention, more support. So you have the freedom to really modify the tests. As you can see at the bottom, you have you have a choice. You could make A version or A and B version simultaneously, and then all it takes is to generate the test, clicking on generate, and that's it. So I will just go back to the PowerPoint, and I should probably say that me and Tanya, we're not members of neither CLET nor Cambridge sales teams. We're just genuinely enthusiastic about this book. It just works for us. And if we could save you the trouble of going to the numerous, publishing houses and browsing through books, if we could save you this trouble, we've done our work. It's genuinely easy, as Tanya said. So as we're kind of close to our finishing time, a few words about the workbook. Now, I could probably show you the difference in volume between the I'm not sure that this is going to work. Now, this is the course book, and this is the workbook. It looks, I don't know if you could see that in the camera. Yes, something hits. The workbook seems tiny in comparison to the course book, but that's simply because you've got a lot of stuff in the student's book, and combining that with the workbook, it does work well for us. It does work well. So the number of pages in the workbook is just 63 compared to 200 in the course book. The number of units is the same. Now you've got choice with this textbook. You've got choice of a hard copy for the students with or without answers. From our experience with the youngest ones, because we have students as young as 12 in FC level. So with such students and such groups, we prefer the textbooks without answers, as they might be tempted to do their homework real quick and without any effort. Effortlessly. As for the elder ones, we get the kids over 16, we get the workbooks with answers, as this saves time. Now you have an option to choose the workbook, which is entirely online, which honestly we have not used yet. However, the advantages of that one, from what I understand, is that you have control over what they've done, and you can observe their progress. You've got some statistics. You've got some. You understand in real time what they're struggling with, what they need to do, how many times they've attempted a certain activity, which is of great benefit, especially if you are working from home and online. Now, apart from the book, the student's book and the course book, the kids and you have access to Cambridge LMS learning management system, where both you and the kids have access to online activities, online practice. You can see that the online practice is limited to grammar and vocabulary. Me and Tanya sometimes wish there were readings as well. So maybe in the near future, our colleagues would think about that. But there's plenty of reading material in the textbooks. So we can't really expand this. There's a lot of stuff on the book, so you don't really need many more readings and supplements and things like that. So the grammar and vocabulary, my next slide will show you that the extra grammar activities are about 20-ish, I think 25, I counted them the other day. So 25 extra grammar activities that your students could do. So if you have somebody who needs extra support, et voila. The same with vocabulary, 20 something extra exercises they have access to, and you can monitor. So as I said, there are some statistics. This is not the online workbook. This is not the online workbook. That's the extra online practice, which comes with the workbook, the hard copy of it. So you've got access to this information, number of attempts, score of your students, how they score it, how they're progressing, which is invaluable. And this takes us to the C1 textbook, which we haven't laid our hands on yet, but we've already ordered a copy from our colleagues from DIMA and from CLED. So we are very much looking forward to using it from September next year. So that's all from me. I'd like to say thank you for deciding to choose your afternoon, to spend your afternoon with us, and over to my colleague Tanya for a few more words from her.
It's just a concluding remarks. Dear colleagues, in conclusion, allow me to encourage you, because you are all hardworking people and passionate about your job. It's not a job, it's a vocation, teaching all these students. Books in general have the magical ability to transfer us to different places, to open up doors to unknown worlds, and to spark our desire to ask for more, to ask for better, for higher, towards fulfilling our dreams and conquering new peaks. Why not reach these goals with a course book? If you open up the right book in return, it might open up the world for you and your students. On behalf of Elena and me, I would like to thank you all for sharing with us your valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, we've got a question. If we could address it. We've got a question from a colleague asking if the tests are in PDF. Yes, they are in PDF. Actually, they are in PDF format. If there are any more questions, we're more than willing to answer.
What I would say, Elena and Stanka, is I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you're not Cambridge employees, because I was thinking during that, I didn't know any of the content of that presentation at all. I hadn't seen it in advance. I didn't know what you were going to say at all. And it was obviously fantastically complimentary, so we're really grateful for that. But obviously, I think we can believe that this is a genuine report and that you're telling us your experiences. So thank you for that. You've probably thought we could use your presentation in other places, maybe. perhaps when we get back into real life travel, you can start touring, and sharing your experiences.
Actually, we should say thank you, because this series has saved us a lot of time browsing through all sorts of extra materials and preparing tests. So yeah, thank you. And to the team of authors, which we forgot to mention, Anthony Cosgrove and Deborah Hobbs for the FC textbook.
Super. Well, thanks very much. I think that's. I mean, if there are any other questions, then please do send them. That was a lovely presentation. We really appreciate that. So one more thank you, Stanka and Elena. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We're welcome back. We're nearly at the allotted time for Matt to start, and he's with us. Matthew Elman might be familiar to you. I hope you are there, Matt. I can't see you yet. Oh yes, you are. You're starting to share your screen. Matt's our own in-house teacher trainer, but he's much more than that. I mean, he's been a teacher in many countries across Europe, the Middle East, and the Far East as well. And he is also on the IATEFL Teacher Training Education Special Interest Group, which I think, you know, is a high accolade. And you won an Elton's Award, didn't you, once, Matt, for your dissertation? Which was
I did. Yeah, that was nice.
Which was a nice compliment. And you're going to talk to us about the socially distanced classroom, and specifically in that regard, teaching of grammar and vocabulary. And we're hoping that it's going to be there's going to be a little bit of chat and interaction in this session. I know that you're going to be encouraging the teachers to contribute. We'll try and keep an eye on the chat box, but obviously that does run quite quickly at times. If you have specific questions, again, please put them in the Q&A, and I should think there'll be some time at the end to take a look at those specific questions. Okay, so I think we're just perhaps not quite on the hour, so should we hang on just until time in case people have gone away to get themselves a drink? And
sure. I can see Antonia's in Plovdiv, which is great. Where is everyone else? Let me know in the chat. It's a shame we can't be all together in that big room in Sofia this year.
Yeah.
You know that big room that you're talking about, Matt. It's even bigger than it is when we're in it, isn't it? I think it's just curtains in a great big arena, really, isn't it?
It's enormous. Yeah. Anita's in Sofia. Someone else in Plovdiv. Hello, Darina. Burgas, I haven't heard of that one. Excellent, great to have you all here. Have you had a good day? Have you been enjoying the sessions? Lots of people saying hello now, that's nice.
Stanka comes from a place that I don't even start to try to pronounce. I think they're teasing us, Matt.
Excellent. I think looks like everyone's having a good time. I know this is the last session of the day, and I know you've been enjoying sessions for the whole afternoon. So thanks for sticking around for me. As Duncan mentioned, we're going to be talking about teaching grammar and vocabulary in the socially distanced classroom, this new situation that we find ourselves in as a result of the pandemic. And I'm sure that your classrooms look different to one another. Some of you might be teaching online, some of you might be teaching back in your school, and I'll be asking you to tell me how you're teaching and how your classroom looks in just a moment. So just to let you know what we're going to be talking about, I'd like to know a little bit more about your current teaching context before we dive in, and then I'm going to talk about the ingredients of good language teaching. And when I say language teaching, I really mean grammar and vocabulary teaching. What do we need to do to make sure we are ticking all the boxes when we teach grammar and vocabulary? And then kind of bringing these two areas together, your current teaching context and these ingredients, I'll try and give you some practical ideas that you can use in your classrooms at the moment, depending on how your classroom looks. And I hope there'll be time for questions at the end. So as Duncan mentioned, if you do have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box as we go through, and we'll take them at the end. So let's just take a step back and look at where we are now. I don't need to tell you about coronavirus. We all know far too much about it already. But over the past year, we've seen this huge shift in education because of countries implementing nationwide lockdowns, or maybe regional lockdowns as well. And I'm sure that it's been no different in Bulgaria. You might have had to teach from home if your school is closed. And if so, then you're very much in the majority, because nearly every school or nearly every population in the world has been affected by school closures. And that means, of course, that teachers have had to teach online. About 2/3 of teachers for the first time. So you have my sympathy if that's you, because I know it's not easy at all. Very challenging situation to deal with. So congratulations for still being here and for still devoting time to your own professional development. So I'd like to know a little bit more about your situation. This is the kind of global general situation, but let me know how it looks for you. So first of all, could you let me know what age groups you teach? You can just choose the relevant letter or letters and just put them in the chat box so I know how old your students are. And that's the first step to understanding how your classroom might look. So lots of C's, lots of secondary teachers, but a few A's and B's and D's. Oh, Daniela, I think it was said all of them. Okay, so we have quite a mixture. I think C is the winner, but there are definitely lots of B's and some A's and some D's as well. Fantastic. Okay, so we have a good mix, but I'm going to assume we'll take secondary as our kind of main, as our default context. And then the second question for you is, how are you teaching at the moment? Are you teaching online, face-to-face, or both, a combination? Okay, it looks like both is the winner here. Lots of C's. Some of you just teaching online. Okay, and a follow-on question then, if you're teaching face-to-face, or if you're teaching online and face-to-face, do you have to do anything in your face-to-face classroom? Do you have to wear a mask? Are the students spaced out? Does everybody have to wash their hands all the time? What kind of measures do you have in school? Or is it just normal? Is it just a normal school day? Okay, thanks, Ilian. So you have to wear a mask. And that's obviously very difficult. Okay, masks for everyone. Lots of masks, okay. So that is tough. And how about your timetable? Any differences to your school schedule? Distance between the students. Okay. That changes all the time. Yeah, this is a common pattern, Christina, that all of these things change depending on how bad the virus is in the population. So yeah, and Ilian saying that you're behind schedule. I think that's also very common. So all of these things pose a challenge, don't they, to us? And some of the challenges that people have mentioned are that you have less teaching time. My chat box has just disappeared, but I think it was Ilian saying that the lessons are shorter now, lots of breaks. So maybe you've got less teaching time. Maybe it takes longer to set up tasks in the classroom. It's difficult for you to hear the students, and it's difficult for them to hear you and to hear each other because everybody's wearing a mask. And it's much more difficult to do any group work or pair work because of the masks and because your students might be spaced far apart. And then something that a lot of teachers have said to me, which is that it's really difficult to provide help to students individually in the classroom. You can't go up to a student and notice that they're having trouble and then help them because you can't get close to the desk in order to help them. So lots and lots of challenges coming up for teachers. Is there anything that is not on my list that you have found? Any challenges that you're facing? Obviously, if you're teaching online, then there are other challenges. Wow, so Elian's saying that students have lost their desire to learn. And that's really sad, isn't it? Lots of teachers telling me that students have kind of lost those good habits. They've kind of forgotten how to behave in school now because they've been at home for so long. If you're teaching online, then maybe you find that it's difficult to motivate your students. They don't want to turn on their cameras. Yeah, a lack of working habits, someone says. Absolutely, Christina. So teachers' workload is much heavier. And a lack of proper communication. Okay, so there's a lot to deal with, and I'm not going to promise that I can solve all these problems, but I'll try and make it easier for you. Yes, it's hard to read their emotions behind the masks, very hard, or behind a screen, if you're teaching online. So it's very difficult to know what your students are thinking. Are they enjoying the lesson? Are they finding it too easy, too difficult? So what does this mean for us? I think 3 basic things that we're going to try and keep in mind as we talk about teaching grammar and teaching vocabulary. The first thing is that we need to try and keep it simple for ourselves and keep it simple for students as we try and come back into a school environment and remember what those routines are. Go back to basics. So we want to just take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and think about whether it's the best way of achieving what we want to achieve. If we've got a classroom that looks different and all of these restrictions, then maybe doing the things that we used to do in the same way that we did them before is not the best approach. So it might be that we need to rethink some of the things that we're doing. And then very importantly, I think it's important to be kind to yourself and to, as Christina said, the workload at the moment is very high, I think, for all teachers. And you need to try and manage that for yourself because your health is also very important. So I'll come back to these principles and we'll look at how we can achieve these things. But first, I'd like to talk about grammar and vocabulary and the ingredients of good language teaching. So in general, there are 2 ways that you can learn your grammar and learn your vocabulary. You can study in a classroom or you can learn it out in the world. But the going out in the world method is not particularly practical right now because we can't travel. And it's also difficult anyway, isn't it, for your students to hop on a plane and come to London and learn English. That's why you're teaching them. But regardless of how students learn their language, regardless of how they learn grammar and vocabulary, there are certain things that they need in order to be successful. So some essential ingredients. So I think there are 7 of them. I'm going to represent them with symbols on the screen. And before I tell you what they are, I'd just like you to see if you can guess. What are the 7 things that your students need if they are going to learn grammar or vocabulary successfully? Answers in the chat. This is where I feel like a teacher online because I can't see anyone's face and nobody's writing in the chat box yet. All right, thank you, Elian. So here we go. Very good. Thank you very much. So everything you have mentioned, motivation, patience, good memory, all of these things are very, very important for language learning generally. So you're absolutely right. Is there anything that is particularly important to grammar and vocabulary? Darina's mentioned something, which is context. So that's excellent. Practice, thanks, Ilian. And attention, I've noticed I've used a different word. I haven't used the word attention, but you're correct. Let me give you a couple of the answers and you can see if you can find the rest. Oops, I know they've all appeared. Never mind. So we had context. Ilian said attention, but I've put noticing. And I think several people said practice. So that's great. Let me just go through these one by one and we'll talk about why they're important. So the first thing that your students need is input. They need some exposure to the language and they need to hear or see that grammar or vocabulary being used. And they need to see it in context. So it's not enough, for example, just to see a list of words. If you're learning vocabulary, you need to see those words being used. And that's where context comes in. So context means that you see the grammar or the vocabulary, or you hear it and you see it or hear it being used as part of a text. So it could be a conversation, it could be something written, an article, it could be a video that you watch, but you need that context. That's very important for understanding how that language is being used in real life. Then comes noticing. So as Ilian mentioned, we need to have our students paying attention to the grammar or to the vocabulary, because if they're not noticing it, then they won't be able to learn it. So noticing comes first, and then once the students have noticed it, they can begin to process it. And when I say processing, I mean understanding the meaning of this new language, understanding the form. So what's the structure of it, if it's grammar, or what's the pronunciation, what's the spelling, all of these things. And how does it fit within what they already know? So all of that, it comes under processing. After we've processed it, then we need to practice it. And I say after, but actually these things kind of happen in a cycle. So as you practice, as you talk to other students, as you write things and use the language, then you continue to process it. As long as you get feedback, and feedback can come from the teacher, or it can come from the people that you talk to or that you write to. So if I turn to my partner and I say something in Bulgarian and my partner just kind of looks at me like, what? Then I know that I haven't created my message successfully and I need to change something. So that's where feedback comes in. And then finally, recycling is very important because, of course, it's not enough just to see a grammatical structure once, or to see or to use some vocabulary once. You have to use it many times and encounter it many times in order for it to really sink in and be remembered. So these are the 7 things that we need, or that students need, if they are going to be successful when they learn grammar or vocabulary. Which one of these do you think is the most important? Is there one that is more crucial than the others? Great, thanks, Dorina. Good. So yes, you've got the answer. Practice. Practice is really the key. So when I say practice, I mean kind of free practice where students are communicating their own meanings, saying what they want to say, talking about themselves, and using all of the English that they know. So they're not restricted. They're not just reading out single sentences, and they're not just kind of repeating patterns. like robots. They're saying, you know, real things, having real conversations. This is the most important element because everything else, all of the other ingredients, can form a part of good practice. So when you practice, when you're talking to people, you're getting input from the person that you talk to because they're speaking back to you in English. There's a context there because you're having a real conversation. You're able to notice things, and you might have experienced this in your own English. That when you're speaking to somebody, you kind of notice things that they say, and then you think, oh, that's nice. I'm going to start saying that as well. So you can notice things in what your partner says. You're continuing to process the language that you know because you're thinking about what you're saying, but you're also thinking about what you're hearing, and you're getting feedback from the person that is talking to you or listening to you. So all of these things can form a part of practice, and that's why it's so important that we have practice as part of our lessons and our grammar teaching and vocabulary teaching. Now, if you'd, I'm not going to go into too much detail about teaching grammar, but if you'd like to learn more, then we do have this free booklet, this free white paper written by grammar guru Scott Thornbury, and it's free to download from the Cambridge University Press website. I think my colleague Gabriella is going to pop that in the chat box now. Thank you so much, Gabriella. So some of the things that I'm talking about, if you're interested, you can learn more by downloading this free booklet. But moving on, how does all this stuff, how do these 7 ingredients look in the materials that we use for teaching? Let me give you an example with a very famous book, English Grammar in Use, first published in the 80s and now in its 5th edition. So if you haven't seen English Grammar in Use, there's a very simple structure to the book. On every 2-page spread, there is one grammar point which is dealt with. And on the left-hand side, you see this kind of explanation of the structure. And on the right-hand side, you see these practice activities. So hopefully looking at this, you can see those ingredients, those 7 ingredients that we just went through. So we've got some input here at the top of the page. We have a context, and the context is given to us by the picture so that we know what's happening. We've got time. We have some of the words in bold, so you can see the target structure in bold, and this helps us with noticing. And then to help the students process the meaning and process the form, you can see the timeline there on the left-hand side. And we've got several examples so that we can see how that works. So this is all to do with processing. If students are using the 5th edition, then they have access to the ebook as well, and they'll be able to listen to these examples. So that processing includes pronunciation processing. And then these exercises are also a form of processing. So this is to do with really understanding what the meaning is, what the form is, and how it's used. So we take students here all the way from input to processing. And the thing that's missing then is the practice side. And that's what you're there for. That's what your classroom is there for. And that's why real teachers are so important. So this is English Grammar in Use, but we have the same thing for vocabulary, same idea with our Vocabulary in Use series as well. So the question for us now is, how do we do these things in a pandemic classroom? How do we make sure that our students have these 7 ingredients so that they can learn their grammar or their vocabulary successfully? Let's take a look at them, and we'll start with the first 4. So input, context, noticing, and processing. So you need to provide your students with contextualized input. And the best way, or one of the best ways to do that, is to use your coursebook. And what often happens is that teachers use their course book, but they use it for just one lesson. So you'll open the book, say, I don't know, let's have a look at page 20. And on page 20, there's a text. And we use that text for that lesson that day, and then we turn the page and we never come back to it and never look at it again. But of course, in any text, there are lots and lots of things that you could notice, lots and lots of elements that you could teach. So one of the things that we should be trying to do is to exploit our course materials a little bit more and really see how much you can use a text in the book or an audio text in the book for more than one lesson and for more than one purpose. And by doing this, you reduce the time that you spend looking for other materials. You can reuse things for different purposes and save yourself some time. And especially if you've got video as part of your lessons, as part of your course materials, or pictures, there's a lot that you can do with these. We also want to unpack some of the contextual features. So we want our students to think about context as much as possible. And we can do that by asking them questions like this. So are these people talking or writing? Who's talking or writing? Why? What's the relationship between them? Because all of these things affect the way that we use grammar or use vocabulary. You don't talk to your children in the same way that you talk to your boss, for example, and you don't talk to your students in the same way that you talk to your friends. So language changes according to context, and we want our students to be able to notice how it changes. Let me give you some examples of some activities. So this comes from English Grammar in Use, and you can see it's a very simple grammar exercise working on helping to students process past continuous. But we can encourage them to think about context by just asking the question here, what's the context? So for each one of these, they can fill in the gap first, and then they have to answer the question, what's the context? So let's take a look at number 2. What were you doing at this time yesterday? I was asleep. So what's the context here? Who do you think is asking this question? And are they speaking or are they writing? We're looking at number 2. Okay, Valentina says speaking. Yeah, in this case, we can kind of see that because we've got the speech marks at the side. Okay, Joanna says that they're at work. And I guess they might be at work. Could be friends. Any other ideas for the people that were... okay, could be a teacher asking a student. Yeah, what were you doing at this time yesterday? I was sleeping. So there's one context that that I think is quite a good one for number 2. I'm just going to see if anybody comes up with it before I tell you. Okay, yeah, I mean, it could be friends, could be colleagues, but there is one, I mean, it's not a very common question, is it? What were you doing at this time yesterday? I think if I was talking to my friends, I'd probably say, what did you do yesterday? Did you do anything exciting yesterday? Ah, so someone's got it here. Is that Milena? My reading of Bulgarian alphabet is very, very bad. So apologies if it's not Milena. But yeah, a police officer. So a policeman interviewing a suspect. What were you doing at this time yesterday? Yeah, it could be a policeman talking to a thief or a suspect of some kind. So you can see that if you can think of a context like that, that's quite memorable, and it makes it much clearer. It makes the whole meaning a lot clearer. And that's the real value of thinking about context. A jealous wife, I love that. Yeah, it could be a jealous wife, I guess. Somebody suspicious. So you can see that for all of these, we could be thinking about this context. Number 4, for example, how fast were you driving when the accident happened? This could also be a policeman. Maybe it could be the person at the insurance company on the phone, something like that. So this is very easy because you don't need any additional materials. You can just use the exercises that are there in your book. Okay, for noticing activities, this is where we want our students to just focus on a particular piece of vocabulary or a particular grammar structure. And there are two main ways that we can get our students noticing. So there's the inductive way or the deductive way. So we can either just tell our students, look, this is the past continuous, and we make it with the past, we make it with was or were and ing. So we can just tell them. Or we can ask the students to work it out and find it for themselves. So inductive means that they find it for themselves. Deductive means that we tell them. And I always have to remember which way around those go because it's counterintuitive. Which method do you think is better at this time when we're working in a socially distanced classroom? Is it better to just tell the students what the structure is, or is it better for them to work it out themselves? Any ideas? Oh, my chat box is frozen. Sorry if I'm not seeing your message. Let's get that back. So usually the answer is both, and both of these methods can be helpful. But I think that at the moment, what is very important is that we make ourselves clear to students, because when you're wearing a mask or when you're teaching online, it's very easy for misunderstandings to take place. So if you go for the inductive approach and you ask your students to kind of work out what the structure is or work out the meaning of an item of vocabulary, then that's great. But I think that it's important for us to just follow up and be clear with the correct answer, so that it's very clear to the students what they're looking at, what it means, and so on. So there are different ways that you can do this, that you can encourage your students to notice things. So if you're working with video, then you could, for example, play the video first with the sound off, and the students have to guess what people are saying. And then you can turn on the sound and see if they were correct. You don't have to do it for the whole video. You could just play the video up until the part that you want them to focus on, and then turn off the sound and say, okay, how did the conversation continue? And let them guess that way. Or you can do it the other way around, and you can play the whole video with the sound on, so that your students have a chance to understand what the context is, and then play it again with the sound off and see if they can remember those important parts. See if they can notice that target language that you want them to learn. So what we're doing here is kind of taking away, making it a bit harder for students to listen, and encouraging them to notice those bits that we've taken away. And you can do the same thing if you don't have video. You can do the same thing with audio. So you could just dictate to your students. It's often seen as quite an old-fashioned technique, but it's such a useful thing to do, to just dictate things to your students and have them write it down. And of course, it needs very little preparation from you. So you could play them the audio and have them write it down, or you could just read it out yourself and have them write it down that way. And ask them to notice these elements. If it's a reading text that you're working with, then you might ask your students to underline the target language, or you might blank it out and ask them to fill in the blanks. And that's easy to do if you're using a PowerPoint like me now. It's quite easy to cover up the words and then show the correct answer afterwards. So all of these things, all of these ways are ways of encouraging your students to notice different words or different structures by covering them up first. Whether that's kind of visually covering them up or orally covering them up. And the final very important element in noticing is to ask concept checking questions. So just checking with your students that they've noticed the right thing. So for example, these are simple questions that you ask to make sure that your students have understood the key ideas. So I might ask, for example, are we talking about the present or the past? Is this a past tense verb or is it a past participle? Things like that. So let's just move on to processing, and I'll show you how we can make sure that this processing stage is as successful as possible. So usually what I'm calling processing, you might already know as controlled practice. But I want to just highlight that processing isn't just about adding new things. It's not just adding new grammar or new vocabulary. It's also about making sure that that new grammar or vocabulary fits in to what the students already know. So here's an example with modal verbs and modals of deduction. So we're using must or can't. For example, it must be very noisy. You can't be hungry already. When we've kind of made a logical deduction and we're just expressing that. So again, this is from English Grammar in Use. We've got our input, we've got our context. So you can see that this guy is thinking and he's just kind of saying what he's thinking, basically. Then we've got these words in bold to help with noticing. And now we get to processing, and students have to fill in the blanks to make sure that they've understood the difference between must and can't and how to use these in a sentence. So pretty simple stuff. But if we then want to teach our students modal verbs of deduction to talk about the past, then they already know this. They already know the words must or can't. And so they're really just learning a slightly different meaning for must and can't, and a slightly different structure, because now we have to use the word have. So this is an example where we can't just add new stuff into their brains. We have to make sure that it fits with what they already know. Otherwise, they're going to get confused. And so again, we have the input, we have the context, we have the noticing and all of that stuff. But when it comes to processing, in this exercise, we're going to combine the modals of deduction in the present and the modals of deduction in the past. So we're trying to have the students process the new stuff and the stuff that they already know. And this is an important element of processing that we often miss out. So for example, if your students are learning present perfect, then it's a good idea to ask them to practice that alongside past tense, for example, because they can have a very similar meaning, and it's important that your students are able to use them correctly. So this is something that we should do more of, I think. Let me give you some examples. A really easy one you can do is the odd one out. So I've got 3 sentences here. Which sentence do you think is the odd one out? Number 1, number 2, or number 3? Okay, we have a 3, we have a 1. I'll give you a clue. The thing I'm trying to teach you, if you're my students, is those modals of deduction. Okay, I think we've got 1s and 2s and 3s, but I think we've got more 1s than anything else. So if you said 1, then congratulations, because you're correct. So this is the odd one out, because here I'm talking about the present. It must be very good. Whereas for number 2 and number 3, I'm talking about the past, and I'm using must have. So you can do the same thing with your students. You can just take these sentences from the exercises that they've done in their books and ask them to find the odd one out, because we want them to process the new stuff and the old stuff, the stuff that they've already learned, and make sure that they can understand the difference between these things. Here's another good activity. Again, just using these exercises that we've studied that are already in your book. So keeping it simple, making life easy for you. And the idea here is a word chain. So we're going to take this sentence and all we have to do is keep adding words into the chain. So if you were in my class, then I would give you a minute or so just to think about this silently, or maybe with a partner. And then we would go around the room and I'd ask you to read out the sentence and add a new word every time. So Jenny was waiting for me when I arrived. And then maybe the next student says, Jenny was waiting patiently for me when I arrived. Or Jenny was waiting patiently for me when I arrived there. So just adding a word every time, and so on, and so on. And this is great because you hear the same structure. We're trying to teach past continuous here, was waiting. You hear the same structure again and again and again. And it really helps the students to think about that new grammar. And it's quite a fun game just to see how far you can go. How many words can you add to the sentence? So you can do that with the whole class, or you can have the students working in pairs or working in a team to just keep the chain going and make it a competition and see how long they can make the chain. Here's another one. Here's another nice activity, which is just simply to personalize what you see. So again, I'm using the same exercise from our book, English Grammar in Use, and you can do the same thing with your course book. And all you have to do is you can start by just changing names. So in number 1, you see Jenny. I might just change that to Duncan or Maggie or Gabriella. Change that name to somebody who's in the classroom with you. Same for number 5, where we've got Sam, or number 7, where we've got Alan. So instead of saying, I haven't seen Alan for ages, just start by changing that sentence and put in the name of somebody that you haven't seen for ages. And then you can ask your students to carry on and say, look, when I last saw him or when I last saw her, he was, and then they have to start using a real meaning. So they're starting to use this grammar to express real meanings and talk about their own lives. So you can start very small, start very easy with just changing names, and then take it step by step so that students begin to change these sentences so that they're talking about themselves and talking about people that they know. So really important ways of processing new grammar or new vocabulary. That's going to help students to understand it and help it sink into their heads. And what's really important is for you to be able to check this, because if your students process it in the wrong way, if they understand the wrong meaning or the wrong spelling or the wrong pronunciation, then that's bad. We don't want that. So you need to just be able to check it. And as I mentioned before, one way of checking it is those concept checking questions. So I could just ask, for example, are we talking about the past? And if you think, yes, your students do this. If no, then they do that. And then you can just get a very clear idea very quickly of who understands or who doesn't. You might use mini whiteboards like this girl in the picture. So I mean, your students could just write on paper, and hold it up to the camera or hold it up in the class. But then you start using a lot of paper. So if you have a whiteboard that you can just wipe and they can reuse it, that's a lot better for the planet. Do some checking outside of the class. So if you set exercises for homework, for example, if you set an exercise like this for homework, then you should probably check it. You should try and check that homework, get your students to send it to you. And you know, if you can't collect their books, then you might just ask them to take a photo and email that to you, just so you can see who understands and who doesn't understand and who needs more help. And for pronunciation, if everybody's wearing a mask, it's very difficult for you to see what pronunciation problems your students have. And it's very difficult for them to see you when you're trying to show them how to pronounce these words. So you might want to create a video for students, and it could be a video of your face, or it might just be a video of your mouth, so they can see your mouth very close, and really see how to pronounce the words. And then you might ask your students to do a short speaking task and record their voices and then send it to you so that you can check their pronunciation. So two websites that are very good for this are voki.com or vocaroo.com, and they're very simple. So you don't need you don't need super fast internet to use either of these. The last idea is a shadow speaking task. And you can do this with your course book, taking one of the listening texts that students have listened to, and then looking at the back of the book and showing them the transcript so that they can listen and read at the same time. And the task then is for them to record themselves saying the same words in the same way. And you would just ask them to do a short section, so maybe 20 or 30 seconds. But what they're aiming to do is to record themselves recording the same message that was there in the textbook, and then they can listen to themselves and listen to the original recording side by side, and just compare their pronunciation to the pronunciation used in the book. Okay, finally, let's just talk about practice, feedback, and recycling. So I said that practice, when I say practice, we're talking about free conversations that allow the students to use all of the English that they know, and to really kind of practice creating their own meanings. So how do you know if your practice activity is good for this? Well, your practice activity should be a framework. So that means that the students have choices about how to say what they want to say. You're not going to tell them you must use past tense or you must use modal verbs. Give them the task and then they have the choice about what to say. Your task should be focused on communicating meaning. So there should be things that they have to say. It could involve any number of skills, and usually a good activity at least involves speaking and listening, because somebody's speaking and someone else is listening. It should also make the students think. So it shouldn't be an activity that they can do on autopilot and just kind of repeating the same things. So some activities are a little bit like this, you know, my pen is on the table, my book is on the table, that kind of stuff. That doesn't make students think, so don't do that if you want a successful practice task. And finally, the tasks should have a clear outcome. So it should be clear to the students when they've finished the task, when they've completed it. Let me show you an example of a task that ticks all of these boxes. So here we have student A describing what is inside their fridge, and then student B has to listen and draw a picture. So first of all, you can see that this task provides a framework. So we're not telling the students what grammar to use or what vocabulary to use. But that doesn't mean that we can't predict what kinds of grammar and vocabulary they will need. Okay, so we can choose a task that is going to help them without telling them what to do. So let's just take a look at this task. First of all, what kinds of vocabulary do you think your students would use if they were going to do this task? What kinds of vocabulary would they need? Okay, nouns, food and drink, of course, yes, Christina. Okay, great. So there is and there are. Yeah, they're definitely going to need that. Okay, we're kind of moving into the area of grammar now. So what kind of grammar do you think they're going to need? Okay, some determinants like much, many, a few, present simple, countable and uncountable nouns. Yeah, quantifiers. Very good. Present perfect, I'm not sure there'd be so much present perfect for this one. Excellent, good. So you can see that you can look at a task and you can predict what kinds of grammar and vocabulary the students will need, but you don't have to tell them. And that means that when our students do this task, if they're not able to use there is and there are, then we need to give them that feedback, and they'll be much more ready to receive the feedback, because that's the gap in their knowledge that they need in order to complete the task. All right, good. Nobody said prepositions of place. So next to the eggs, I have some milk, for example. But yes, have got as well. Good. So there's a lot that you can do. It's also focused on meaning. You can see that there's a range of different skills happening here. So we've got speaking and we've got listening. And if we ask student B to label their picture, then we've got some writing as well. It makes the students think, because there's a little bit of a challenge there to describe what's in the fridge and then to draw it correctly. And we know when the task is finished because the picture will be finished. So we have an outcome as well. So something like this, this is a good practice task because it has all of those 5 elements that we want. So once you've chosen a good practice task, a couple of things that you can do to make it more successful in your classroom. One thing is to flip the practice. And by this, I mean that you kind of set part of your practice task for homework. So for this one, talking about your fridge, I would ask student A for homework to be ready with their description. So they come to class and they're already ready to describe what's in their fridge. And this is all about maximizing thinking and planning time. So we already know that in your classrooms right now, in the socially distanced classroom, everything takes longer and your lesson time is shorter. So we want to give the students that time to plan and time to think at home, so that when they come to the class, they're ready to just talk straight away and we can get into practice straight away. We can also bring in some strategies that we normally use in our listening lessons. So quite often when we're trying to teach listening, we ask the students to predict what they're going to hear, and that helps them to listen better when it's time to listen. And we can do that in our classrooms when students are doing their practice tasks, because it's harder to listen now when people are wearing a mask. So if we ask, for example, student B to just spend a minute thinking about what they're going to hear, what do you think student A is going to be saying, then that prediction time is very effective. It means that they can listen much more effectively, even though there's a mask in the way. And I think we should not be afraid to repeat these tasks. So you can ask the students to turn the other way and talk to the person on the other side of them or in front of them, and do the task again in order to get the most from it. There's a lot of benefit to repeating the same practice tasks. Finally, last thing is feedback and self-assessment. And of course, it's more difficult now for us to give feedback to students, particularly individually. So the idea of having students assessing themselves is a lot more relevant at the moment. And if we want them to do this, then we need to start with the task that students are going to complete, and we need to think about what the criteria for success are. So what are students having to do in order to be successful? Let me give you an example. This is a writing task. This is from Prepare, which is one of our course books for secondary learners. And you can see that the students have to write a postcard to a friend. So just take a quick look at this. What do you think the students would have to do for their postcard to be successful? You don't need to write anything this time. I'll just give you a minute to think. So the things that they would need to do are all of these. So they should write in a friendly way because it's a postcard. So it's this idea of context. They need to notice the context. And then the task asks them to write about where they are, write about the weather, what they're doing every day, how long they're staying, whoops. And of course, to do all of this, they should use present tenses. So once we've looked at the task and we've decided what students need to do to be successful, then we can put it into a checklist like this. And the students can decide for themselves if they have done these things or not. And this is very effective. It works very well if you give this to your students in the classroom, and then they can make the changes that they need to make before they give their writing to you, so that when you mark the writing, you don't have to say, oh, well, you didn't write about the weather, or you didn't write about where you are. So give this check to them first. They can make some changes, and then you can give feedback on the really useful stuff afterwards. A few tips for this: keep the criteria simple, because it should be easy for the students to understand them on and decide if they've met the criteria or not. Make sure that they relate to the task. So you might have to change them slightly every time just to make sure that they're talking specifically about your postcard or whatever it is you're doing. Just take some time to explain this to students. So you might talk through the checklist with an example postcard just so that they understand how it works. And it takes a bit of time for students to learn how to do this. So don't expect them to do it perfectly the first time. It might take a few weeks really for your students to understand how to self-assess. And feedback more generally, if you're teaching online, or even if you're teaching in a classroom, you might ask one of the students in the group to write the key points from a discussion, and then you can give feedback on that. You might ask students to correct some of the sentences that you've taken from their discussion at home. So again, maximizing the time in the classroom for speaking and practice. Or you might use something like Kahoot to review some examples of your students' language. So you can correct their mistakes, or they can correct their mistakes using Kahoot or Wordwall or something like that. We don't have time, unfortunately, to talk about feedback in much detail here, but there's a lot to say about feedback. And again, if you want to learn more, we have a free white paper about this topic that you can download from the Cambridge University Press website. And I believe Gabriella is going to pop a link in the chat, and she has. Thank you, Gabriella. So you can download that one for free as well. So these are all of the things, the key ingredients that we need for our successful language lessons. And hopefully you've got some ideas now about how you can do these things in your pandemic classroom. So it's all about making the most of the resources in your context, making sure that you've included all of those ingredients, and being kind to yourself making life easy for yourself until this whole horrible pandemic is over, which I hope will be soon. If you'd like to learn more about In Use, the In Use series, then you can do so here at cambridge.org/inuse. And of course, we've got lots and lots of titles also on cambridge.org for teaching vocabulary or teaching grammar. These are just a couple of the books that are relevant. But thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop there. And if we've got any time for questions, I'll try to answer them now.
Marvelous, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Duncan.
There's been a lot of chat, but currently no specific questions, at least not that I've seen. You did a fantastic job, Matt. It's really good to hear about those experiences and those suggestions for how to deal with these situations. I'm sure people found that very useful.
Lovely. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.